but
Filmmakers are the only artists that don't get to control how our work is displayed. No, it's true. Like if you go to the MoMA, you know, somebody's actually put that picture on the wall, and they've flown them there to do that, and so they're in control. If you go to poets, you know, get to dictate how their work is viewed and stanzas and everything else. We just, filmmakers, we send our DVDs out or our 35 millimeter prints out and hope for the best. So yeah.
Well, we try. we try in the best faith here. So anyhow, Tia Lessin, and I just kind of want to start off. First of all, I've known Tia since way back when I met Tia. She was organizing, doing a kind of an impossible labor organizing task, organizing cafeteria workers on Capitol Hill. Still in college, but you were taking time off, right, from Cornell. And actually, you asked me to draw a picture for one of your flyers.
Oh, really?
You know, I don't know where she got the idea I had artistic skill, but it happened that way anyhow. And so ever since then, we've been very good friends. Interestingly enough, the cafeteria workers on Capitol Hill are on strike right now.
Are they really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Apparently, at the same time that Taco Bell is sending free tacos to Capitol Hill staffers because they're trying to pass legislation that would prevent franchise workers from unionizing, I guess all of the food services on Capitol Hill are outsourced now, so they're not federal employees, and so they're striking, along with like the McDonald's.
They were outsourced because I tried to organize them, and that was the Congress's way of dealing with that problem, is that they outsourced all that labor.
So it all comes around.
It all comes around.
It's a big circle. So I know you've been very involved. I guess the first question I want to ask you, there's obviously lots of questions about the story of Citizen Coke and also working with Michael Moore is, you know, you're a filmmaker now and a much celebrated filmmaker. And but you didn't start off in film. You started off in labor studies and union organizing. And so students tend to, you know, come to college. At least the ethos now is study something that will get you a job, and then getting on a particular track. But you say didn't start off in filmmaking or communications or something. So how did you get from where you were when you say graduated at Cornell to making films? Or there's probably steps in there that I'm completely unaware of.
I studied history at Cornell.
Oh, history, okay.
And so in history, you know, is all about storytelling. So in some ways, not, you know, can you guys all hear me back there? Yeah. Not a big leap, you know. I was particularly interested in labor history, and that was my concentration, American labor history. And though when I left, it wasn't on the trajectory of filmmaking, it was on the trajectory of organizing and activism. And I guess it was that campaign I was working on, organizing the restaurant workers, and a BBC crew came to film what we were doing, and they were documentary filmmakers behind the cameras. And I found myself fascinated with what they were doing, probably more interested in them than I was in what I was doing. And I guess it just sort of was, you know, it took a hold of me. I also, you know, when I was organizing, I'd show the workers movies, and we'd have, movie nights once every couple weeks. And I found that, you know, films, particularly documentary films, were powerful tools for, you know, engaging hearts and minds. So it wasn't a big leap, but I started out as a storyteller. I came to that again with a little jaunt as an organizer, I guess. So what was the first film project that you got involved in, and how did you get started with that? I guess officially, I worked on a series of videos for the Holocaust Museum when it was opening back in 1989 in DC. And there was a series of videos of American responses to the Holocaust, particularly the lack of response at the time by FDR and and the Allies when they knew what was happening in Germany and elsewhere. And that was profound for me because my grandmother was a Holocaust survivor, and I found that very sort of personal and moving. But I learned how to edit and was on that trajectory until I came to New York and met Michael Moore and started doing something else.
So how did you meet Michael Moore?
I moved to New York, working doing film work, and somebody handed me a copy of a pilot of his new TV series, TV Nation. Well, of course, I'd seen Roger and Me in '89. I'd seen it in the theater in D.C. I was quite moved and stunned by that film because not only was it this powerful portrait of Michael's hometown of Flint, Michigan, it was a story told in a way that no other documentary film had been told that I'd ever seen. I mean, I hadn't seen Sherman's March, and I hadn't seen, there's maybe one other film that went off the tracks. So this was an extraordinarily funny, tragic film, and I realized that there's a lot you could do with film that I hadn't seen in my social studies class. Anyhow, so somebody handed me this VHS, back in those days we had the VHS tapes, of this new TV pilot that he had made. This was about 4 or 5 years after Roger and Me. And I popped in my VCR, and it was like no other television I'd ever seen. I mean, this was back in '95. And now we've seen some of the TV like that. I mean, how many of you have seen TV Nation or The Awful Truth? Okay, well, we need to bring it back. It was sort of Jon Stewart before Jon Stewart and Colbert Show. I mean, we did these little 15-minute documentary segments, it was political satire and activism and storytelling all rolled into one.
I remember one of the segments where there was a guy who was he had some kind of cancer, and his insurance wasn't covering the treatment, so they staged his funeral. He was still alive, but Michael basically staged his funeral in front of the offices of the insurance company.
That was
basically,
my piece, yeah.
Oh, you did that.
I produced that piece.
And basically shamed the company into covering him eventually.
Not eventually, within a week. So he had not cancer, he needed a liver and pancreas transplant.
Okay.
They would only give him one, but they wouldn't give him the other, and they said it was experimental. It was Humana. And so we flew him from Boynton Beach, Florida to Kentucky, where Humana was located. And we got him in a meeting with the vice president of Humana. Unbeknownst to them, they didn't realize they were going to be meeting with this guy who they denied coverage to. So we did kind of stage things like that. We also snuck Michael into the meeting as a PA. In those days, he could do that. Nobody recognized him. And yeah, within about 4 or 5 days, they not only decided to give Chris his treatment, life-saving treatment, but they changed their policy and they allowed that kind of operation for other people. So that was kind of an amazing thing that you can do with the power of the camera behind you to expose injustice and force some accountability.